Welcome to this module of Professor Messer's free CompTIA A+ certification training course on planning a Windows installation. I'm James Messer, and in this video, we're going to go through the requirements of CompTIA A+ 220-701, that's your essentials exam, section 3.3, where we need to explain the process and steps to install and configure the Windows operating system. And that includes quite a few things, including verifying hardware compatibility, how you would install the operating system, and all the different things you need to think about before you go through that process of the actual Windows installation. Let's start with, before we even install anything, what we're really doing when we start up our Windows system. Is it going to be an upgrade to Windows, or is it going to be a clean install of our Windows operating system? And if we're going to upgrade, that means that we already have an existing operating system. We're already running Windows XP and we want to upgrade to Vista. Or we're running Windows 2000 and we want to upgrade to Windows XP. There's already an operating system. So there's probably files on the computer. There's applications that's already in use on the computer. There are specific user profiles configured on that system. And an upgrade automatically assumes, at least in most people's minds, that when you move from one operating system to another, you're going to try to preserve as much of that user interface experience as possible on the new operating system. That's a lot different than a clean install. On a clean install, the hard drive is either completely brand new and there's no operating system on it whatsoever, or when you would perform the installation, you're going to tell the operating system installation program, if there's anything on the hard drive, just nuke it. We're going to start completely from scratch. In fact, you may repartition the entire drive at that point, which of course is going to delete. You'll lose any data that might exist on that drive already. And after you do the repartition, there's a reformatting process that happens after that. In either of these cases, obviously, you want to be very careful about losing data. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But when you're telling somebody, we're going to put Windows Vista or Windows XP on your machine or whatever it happens to be, make sure in your mind, is the end user thinking that you're going to upgrade their existing system, or do they think that you're just going to start fresh with a clean install? Because that's going to make a big difference about what the end user experience is going to be once they get into that new operating system environment. Let's talk about the installation process and what we should think about doing when we go through the time of starting with an existing operating system or a blank computer and getting all the way through to the end. Now, the first thing that we want to think about is whether there's something on the computer that needs to be backed up and how we're going to do that. So backing up and backing up and backing up. That's the first step of this installation process. Secondly, we're going to check minimum requirements for this computer. We're going to move this computer from one operating system to another. It's probably a newer operating system. Can it even support that new operating system? Thirdly, we want to check hardware compatibility. Just because the computer works with one operating system doesn't mean it's going to work with another. How do we check that? The fourth thing is we want to plan for what file system we're going to put in there. If you watched our previous video, then you know we went through FAT32 and NTFS. We showed you some of the differences. So we may want to think about, when we put this on, what type of file system are we going to decide to use? And lastly, we want to decide how we want to perform the installation. Is it going to be something on a local CD? Is it going to be over a network? And how do you do that? We'll talk all about that. If you've watched many of my videos, then you know a big mantra of mine is backup, backup, backup. I have an automated system at my office. It backs up my computer every night. I've got some hard drives that are in a dock where I can pull a hard drive out and replace it very quickly if I need to, if I fill it up and run out of space. I have multiple backups available. I can go back to previous versions of files. It's an important part of preserving this information on your computer. And now that we have a lot more pictures, a lot more home videos, as time goes on, those particular data files, those digital things, those digital memories of ours become a lot more valuable as time goes on. So we want to make sure, if we're going to do an upgrade or an installation of our operating system, let's make sure we back it up. There are some backup programs that are just in the operating system. We can just choose the Windows backup, and it will take all the files that we need and put them off onto a CD-ROM or a CD read-write, or it may copy them off to a separate hard drive. There's also a number of third-party imaging and backup solutions options you can look at. You want to be sure to get something that not only gets it there, but you may want to test it and make sure that you're able to restore it back from that. At a very minimum, just plug in a backup drive, plug in a USB drive, and copy the user files off there. In some cases, that's actually a much safer idea because you're copying the exact file, and you don't need a third-party application to be able to restore those. Take the entire pictures directory, copy it to another drive. Take the entire documents directory, copy it to another drive. And your users have to make sure they have things in places you can find them, just to make sure you don't forget anything you might have somewhere else on that hard drive, because once it's gone, it's gone. You want to make sure also that the applications that people use, that you have a copy of the original disks for those applications. When you do an operating system upgrade, generally the applications stay in place with all of their settings and you don't have to reinstall anything. But if you're doing a clean install, it's a very different scenario. You need your original application disks, because you're going to have to reinstall every application that they want to use. So if they have an application that's very important to them, they have no idea where the installation media is. You may want to think about having to do a full clean install on that machine, because once you move to that new clean installation, you may not have a way to install that application again. So something to think about when you're planning and going through this process of doing either an upgrade or a clean install. We had a previous video where we stepped through minimum requirements of the operating system to be able to run. And those minimum requirements were things like the CPU and how fast the CPU was, how much memory, how much available disk space was available, what type of video did you need. Those are very important considerations, because your minimum requirements will determine, can I even install this operating system onto this hardware? You also, when you get to this point, may find that you don't have enough memory or you don't have enough hard drive space. So you're going to have to do an upgrade to the memory just so the new operating system is able to install and be able to use that new OS. Or you may need a new hard drive that's got more space on it. One thing, just as a best practice that I recommend, is going through and performing your hardware upgrade well before you do your operating system upgrade. And that's because if you do everything at one time and you run into a problem, you may not know, was that a problem with the new memory I installed? Or is it a problem with the new hard drive I installed? Or is it a problem with the new operating system I installed? And that can be a lot more difficult to troubleshoot. If you go in a week before, you upgrade the memory. Now, of course, you've taken care of any hardware upgrade you have to do, but the memory can sit there for a week or so. And if the person who uses that computer finds that there are problems after doing the memory upgrade, you can wait on doing your operating system upgrade and fix your memory problem first.